Okay. Hi everyone. So this is going to be our seventh session. It's going to be mostly a work period, but I'll go over a couple of bonus topics before I guess we get to working on our game. I guess like the first thing is this is you don't actually have to download any of this unless you wanna implement if you unless you want to try out these like couple of what is it? Unless you want to try out adding like levels and bullets immediately, because this code is obviously from our previous game. So assuming that your game idea is like fairly different, you might just want to go and add like the levels or the bullets to your game later and just like reference the slides. But the links are here if you need them. Um, so I guess like first off we have code organization and like the main idea here is basically each try to use each function. Well, first of all, use functions, use like loops whenever you see like, oh, I'm making a bunch of platforms. Maybe you try to come up with a way to like, use a loop to create a bunch of them in random locations. And yeah, sure, you have to check for overlap. That is like a slight issue, right? But you just find a way around that. And then yes, in terms of functions, you generally want each function to be able to perform like, I guess, a specific task. So you would be like, oh, this function's for collision. And then, maybe you're using sub functions like, oh, this function checks for like whether they're overlapping in the X direction. But you just want to make sure like one function never has like two like random things, I guess. Like generally speaking, you don't actually want to put like you don't really want to mix your I mean, it's not a big deal, but jumping and like movement, for example, sometimes that doesn't go too well together if you have like your jump logic. Depends. Um, but I guess like something just use common sense, I guess. It's kind of like yeah. The other thing is commenting. I feel like we mentioned this before already, but with commenting it's one of the things you can use it for is kind of describe what a function or a module is do or a class is doing, and then another thing that you can kind of do sometimes, like most of the time, I think most people don't really get into this, but if there was an alternative option to do something, you can add a comment and explain. And then you can also like, especially for functions and stuff, you can add comments to like let people how to use it, know how to use it. And then for our Sections code, like there's actually quite a few. We've added more comments than I would usually recommend, but just for like learning purposes, if I just go in here, for example, right now, um, like even all these beginning things, I'm not sure if I would really leave them in, like useful colors, creating the screen and the clock. It depends on who you're working with as well. Like if everyone in your team, for example, knows Pygame pretty well, then there's probably this comments just take up space, right? And like having the update section, I would keep that because it just kind of helps you keep the code organized. But so I would say comments for entire chunks of code, like over here, it's pretty good. And this things that like aren't obvious, right? And there's other stuff like here you don't really, this is really not something you need to comment, especially if you're working with people who know what they're doing, because it's pretty obvious within itself, like create an enemy class, right? Object. And then like creating groups that this comment is once again, it's redundant. Like you can see right there that it's creating an enemy group and adding an enemy. It's only for like people who aren't like familiar with the language, right? Okay, so oops, wrong one. Next, we have a couple bonus topics. First one being levels. So the the code's kind of all here if you ever want to come back to it, but I'll kind of just step through it. So what we do is we create like this basically level. It's the main idea is like once you I guess defeat all your enemies or maybe reach the treasure chest or something, then you can like go to the next level. So basically the map changes. Like you probably all played games with levels. Mm, so the two main things that you want to have in the initiation function for the level is, at least in our example, we're definitely going to have platforms because that's like the map. And then you also want to have enemies because we're kind of using enemies to check if we get to move on to the next level. So you can see here, like here's the parameters you have to, and you pass them as lists, right? And so you can actually turn a like regular list that you pass in here into a Pygame group. So that's let's see. No, actually, no, sorry. Yeah, sorry, here's how it works. So each platform, like each level consists of like a list of platforms, right? And then this group here is okay, I'll have to get back to this later, but I'm pretty sure this is like actually a group of levels. I might be wrong. Nope, never mind. I think they just converts the list into the Pygames version of list, so groups like a fancy list with more operators. Then we have like a list of all of the levels, right? So, mm, yeah. And as you can see, each of these levels only has like one platform and one enemy. And then the last thing you do is you can set the current level to basically the 0th index, which is going to be the first item, right? And then we can make it like a function to calculate, when to switch to the next level. And basically what it does is this one is like it's like what's the next level that we should be going to? And it basically adds one to the current like level index. So if we go back here, it's like if the level index was 0, now it's going to be 1, right? And now if it's 1, it's going to reference the next level in the list. It just changes the current level or the new level to that the next one. And now it's like, when do we call next level? Well, if there's no more enemies, right? So level.enemies was like uh this over here, this section. Like usually you might have like more than one enemy. And once they're all like deleted, then we go to the next level. So you can always come back and reference this. You can kind of copy the code, although like you might not have exactly an enemy and platform class, so you might want to rename this, but it's the same idea. Then the second one is bullets. So I guess like key components to bullet sprite is you have, I get the shape, size, image, color, movement, collision. Oops. And like one of the things you could do as part of like efficiency, if you had like a similar file like enemy.py where they have the image, they have the rectangle, they have kind of a speed, and they kind of have some collision built in, then you can kind of copy and paste the code and edit it. It kind of helps. And the image is over here if you need it. You can use like anything. So how most of this is actually stuff you've already seen before. It's like you get the image, right? Load the image, transform it to match your um what is it called? To match your desires. Like I actually think this is a strangely shaped bullet. It's probably going to be quite big because 80 pixels wide, 50 big. But yeah, then you get the rectangle, set the position, and then the bullet also is going to have like a velocity and I guess also like who it's supposed to harm in this case, those self.enemies. And during the update stage, so each frame, the bullet is just gonna like move a certain number of tiles. So you actually have to make like it says the same move as a player class, but you would if you were actually to do this, you want to define move in the bullet section as well, right? Maybe it's just like self.rect.x plus equals. Basically, that's all it is. And next thing you do is you want to, okay, first of all, you want to detect collisions, right? So like for all the enemies in the enemies list, if the bullet collides with an enemy, kill the enemy. In this case, the bullet keeps on going. Personally, I think I would also kill the bullet, but I think you can actually you probably just do self.kill to delete the bullet that hit the enemy. Um, but then you'd also have to break out of the loop. So in this, if you do it this way, you basically like the bullet penetrates every single enemy. And then, so like an example of how to organize the code is like, instead of putting this, um, you can use like functions. So you can use like a move function and you can use like a handle collisions function. Okay. And I guess like the last part, you're probably wondering like, oh, how do you actually like, how's the bullet relate to the player? So what you can actually do is you create like a function in the player class, which creates bullet objects whenever you shoot. So maybe set like a key, I don't know, space key, space bar or something. It's probably the jump key, but you can change it. Set the space bar to like call this function, right? And it basically creates a new bullet object with like um at the player's position, and then it gives us like a velocity. You preset it. You can also choose a velocity to fire based on like the direction the player is facing. So usually you might do times like self dot facing, and then self dot facing is either like 1 or -1 depending on which way the player is facing. And then the other optional thing you can do, you can like have a list of the player's bullets. It might be useful to you, it might not. And like once again, key, okay, in this case they're using X. It's like when X is pressed, create a bullet. Right? You can also, okay, I guess part of the reason you might have like a self.bullets is you can have like the length of a list and you can be like, okay, how much ammo do I have, right? You'd be like, okay, if the maybe you give yourself like a set amount of ammo and then you once that reaches 0 or something, then you don't let yourself shoot any more bullets. Okay. I honestly do not play Curtain Fire, but one of the things is like if you want this type of game, you first of all, you actually have to implement directions for the bullet. So it's like you have to have the bullet shoot in the same direction as the player. So like right here, I believe this is a velocity, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's somewhere here. Yeah, it's the velocity or the speed. So you actually have to have, I guess, both a Y and X speed, and you have to do that, make it the same direction as the player's facing. So yeah, if you don't want to make a platformer, just remove like there's like 2 or 3 lines that do gravity. If you remove those and add some Y direction movement, so up down, then it's no longer a platformer. It's actually yeah. Um, some shortcuts. I feel like we should have included this at the beginning, but if you highlight like a bunch of stuff and you do control/, you can comment it out or uncomment it. You can also highlight a bunch of lines and you can tab or shift tab to do indents, and then oh, okay. You can also control click on function name to go to the function declaration. Didn't know that. I was actually thinking you can control. This is actually not just coding, but you can control click, and then you can hold down control key and highlight like oh shoot, you can highlight like random bits here and there. It's actually pretty useful for like any document and spreadsheets. Yeah. So now it brings us back to our game developments and. Yeah, so we have a gala event, which unfortunately we didn't like. Okay, there you go, the date. It's December 22nd from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and the registration link. There you go, it's updated. Okay, the registration link is here. So I guess you can do that maybe before you start your exercise, or you can do it after. It doesn't really matter. And so for projects, the top 3 projects will score like at least 100 or okay, they'll score 100 Ignite points. Um, so basically you have to write them in Pygame. Oh, Gala registration event. Okay. I'm not sure. Just like try to register sooner than later, because yeah. Mm. And also I think you also get like extra points for showcasing in I can get back to. You get extra points for showcasing to your mentors in your breakout room and stuff. So what else? I believe oh there you go. Yeah. So basically don't play it's kind of like common sense-ish, like don't plagiarize. So you have to write all the code like from the Ignite sessions, which I mean, it's not the most convenient, especially when it comes to like, I think collision. Usually in most games, I would just like copy and paste some stuff and modify it from there. But in this case, just like, use your brain and get some practice. And then I guess in terms of like ranking, we want creativity. So like generally if you can deviate from like the game that we kind of have, the more you can deviate from that, like the better. Um, so all in terms of like plagiarizing, I'm gonna say like you can use the school like framework that we have here, right? The code, but like if you leave it pretty similar, then you probably won't get that many points for it. And then object-oriented program, OOP is basically like use objects, right? And use the take advantage of the functions, and then um also like because we are going for like simple games, it should be easy to learn, not like I don't know, some heavy RTS game that has a steep learn. Okay, that'd be really impressive though. But if you code like a fully functional like game, I mean, you'd probably still win, even if it wasn't like the easiest to start. Because most of the time, like I would say, don't expect to like get anything like super fancy done unless you are, I guess, like A, pretty experienced and B, willing to like cram a bunch of hours in. But yeah. Um, so yeah, the submission link is like the usual submission link, so where you normally submit your stuff. It's also on the bottom right. And then yeah, I'm not gonna keep you guys waiting, but if you need any images, we there's a file with a bunch of images. You can also there's like a few, I might be able to find them. I can send the links later, but there's a few websites as well where you can get like free assets, or if you're into graphic design you can make your own, but I would say generally speaking just start with like simple shapes, do the graphics like at the end, like the game logic is so much more important. And let me see. Okay. Ooh. Dang, I can't even view the edge of my screen, that's sad. I'll send them in chat later. So hmm. Yeah, you guys can. I'm actually gonna send the link to the images right now, so if you want them, you can stay, or otherwise you can go to your breakout room right away. Okay. Well, everyone left. So sad. Okay. Is that? Is that one? And oh wait, no, that's not the one. Oh well. Okay.